Heaven Official's Blessing. Chapter 116. Audio source: WuXiaWorldAudiobook.com. Eve to the last day of autumn, an unscrupulous substitution. Although Xie Lian had certainly lived his days as someone who was impotent, but pretending not to have the thing, and truly lose the thing forever, were still fundamentally different. Startled, a thin sheen of cold sweat covered his body as he shouted, "Dodge!" Just as the words left his lips, that blade was pulled out of the ground, and Xie Lian instantly took that chance to move forward. Immediately after, he pulled at Shi Qingshan and cried, "Watch out!" The blade plunged down again and slashed right before Shi Qingshan. It was practically pierced down right next to his head, and if it wasn't for Xie Lian pulling back him in time, he would have been nailed to the ground on the spot. He exclaimed, terrified. "That was close. How did you know that was where it would come down?" "Don't know. I guessed," Xie Lian said. It was pure instincts. When it came to killing auras, he was trained to the point of being able to react without thinking. Soon after, a second, a third, and a fourth blade all came plunging down. Each of the sharp shine of the blades blocked the three's way out and way back. Boom! A huge exploding sound soon followed, and violent tremors came from above, causing dust and debris to rain down. "They've opened fire from above." Each booming sound was becoming louder and louder, and the tremors were also growing each time, obviously coming closer and closer. There were sharp blades blocking them from the front and the back, and they were all keen and sharp young treasured swords. Feng Xin was a senior, so who knows if it could fight them straight on. Ming Yi took out a crescent moon-shaped shovel from who knows where and started digging at the side wall in that tiny space with great difficulty. Next to him, Shi Qingshan was so exasperated he was going to spew his soul out. "Ming Shang, can you even do this? Ming Shang, can you hurry up? It's all your fault for not using this spiritual device for so long. You gotta be more intimate with your devices, alright? Look how stiff and rusty it's become." To be fair, having it become rusty was forgivable. After all, there really weren't any other heavenly officials besides Xie Lian who could do something like carry a shovel in and out everywhere every day without feeling ashamed. Veins popped on Ming Yi's forehead. "Shut up!" Xie Lian hastily intervened. "Don't be mad, don't be mad." The tunnels dug through. Sure enough, the moment Ming Yi put pressure on his shovel, a hole opened up before them. With the shovel raised, he burrowed crazily while Shi Qingshan, in the middle, cheered him on crazily. As the only non-crazy person, Xie Lian brought up the rear. That treasured shovel of the Earth Master was indeed magical, and with only a few strokes a new tunnel of over 10 meters was dug. After a while, when he looked back, the hole behind was gradually closing up on its own, but above the place where they were just trapped, a thin light leaked down. Xie Lian immediately spoke up. "It's going to drill through." Instantly Ming Yi picked up his pace and burrowed even crazier, but suddenly, his movements stopped and he looked up. Xie Lian reacted the same way because they both sensed it. It was completely silent above them without any movements. It should be an empty palace above. Since their tunnel was already discovered, they should get out first before anything else. Ming Yi changed his direction and started digging up. "Are you too sure this place really has no one when we get out?" "Haven't heard anything. Unless they're sleeping," Ming Yi replied. Of course, heavenly officials usually didn't need to sleep, never mind sleeping in their own palace in the middle of the day, so that possibility shouldn't exist. Yet who knew? The moment Ming Yi's shovel broke through and the three emerged, poking their three heads out and inhaling the fresh air. Before they even exhaled, they saw from across a bed, and upon the bed was a youth with his arms and legs sprawled out, soundly asleep. Xie Lian. There actually were heavenly officials who sleep in their own palaces in the middle of the day. Aroused by movement, that youth rolled over and sat up, his curly hair a bird's nest from his slumber. He furrowed his brows and scratched his head, watching the three heads from across his bed with sleepy eyes, looking like he couldn't understand why such things would appear in his palace. The three pretended like nothing was the matter and hastily crawled out of the hole. However, just as Shi Qingshan almost crawled out, he suddenly cried out, and Xie Lian looked back. There was a hand that caught his ankle. The owner of that hand was Pei Ming. Even if he was in a tunnel, he was still courteous. I was just gonna say, which little mouse was burrowing under my palace? Qingshan, why are you out and about? Where are you going? You know how your brother gets when he's mad. Hurry back before he finds out. Rui flew out and struck that hand away. Pei Ming hopped out and said, Your Highness, Lord Earthmaster, do you two have nothing better to do? Instigating the Wind Master to run away from home for no reason is quite preposterous, isn't it? Lord Wind Master might be Lord Water Master's younger brother, but he's still a heavenly official of hundreds of years. General Pei, please don't speak like he is not more than 3, Xie Lian said. If we're going to talk reason, to imprison a heavenly colleague for no reason, no matter how you spin it, it's still Lord Water Master who's acting preposterous, wouldn't you say? If his guess wasn't wrong, then the Wind Master really couldn't stay in the upper court any longer. Quan Yijun was still on his bed watching them with a dazed look, seemingly confused by the whole situation still. Pei Ming raised his sword and said darkly, Qi Ying, stop looking and come give me a hand. Apprehend them first. After some contemplation, Quan Yijun actually decided to assist. He leapt off the bed, picked up the bed he was just lying on and hurled it towards Pei Ming. He did indeed give a hand, only it was to help Xie Lian and company. That bed crashed into the unsuspecting Pei Ming and he was flabbergasted. Qi Ying, why did you hit me? Quan Yijun waved his hand at Xie Lian, probably gesturing for them to hurry and leave. Xie Lian and company were stunned for a moment before hastily making their way out. Maybe Shi Qingshan was injured and didn't have the energy, but he only jogged a few steps before his face turned pale, so Xie Lian came around to help pull him up. However, Ming Yi pulled him over directly and carried him up on his back. Xie Lian placed his hand on the door, dug out 2 dice and turned back to that youth. Thanks so much. Quan Yijun was still bashing at Pei Ming wildly. His moves viciously aggressive without method, and if it wasn't for Pei Ming's own skills, if it was anyone else who was taking this beating, their heads would have been covered in blood by now. Pei Ming's veins were popping all over and he yelled, Guards! Stop them! Yet before he called for guards, Xie Lian had already tossed out the dice, opened the door and charged out, then shut the door behind him, slipping the heck out of heaven. However, what he had never expected was after he closed the door and turned around, what appeared before him was a Wacheng with one leg up, stepped on a new donation box, his upper body bare, and wiping at his sweat. A little run-down Puqi shrine couldn't possibly hold this many prominent figures, and Xie Lian felt like he was going to suffocate. There was also one possessed outside howling unsuspectingly, creating noise. Guz, come give daddy's legs a lil massage chop. It was a moment before Wacheng tossed aside the yiming he was using to shave wood, and raised his brows slightly. The color of his skin and the curves of his bare, upper half body were exceedingly beautiful, extremely eye-catching, so much so that Xie Lian's eyes were going to fall out of their sockets. Even if he didn't actually see anything properly, he still couldn't stop the blood rushing to his head, making his eyes go dark. Xie Lian fumbled and tumbled to his side and opened his arms wide, blocking Ming Yi and Shi Qingshan's view. Close your eyes. Quick. Close your eyes. The faces of the other two stiffened and they watched them with an odd look. Wacheng placed his hand on Xie Lian's shoulder and said laughingly, Gurgur, why are you nervous? Only then did Xie Lian snap out of it. That's right. What was he all nervous for? Wacheng wasn't a lady, so what if he was laboring half naked? Still, he didn't drop his arms, doing his best to cover Wacheng completely. Just put on some clothes. Wacheng shrugged. As Gurgur wishes. Then, he calmly grabbed for a shirt, slowly putting it on, taking his time. Watching him look all nonchalant and languid, Shi Qingshan said awkwardly, sorry for the intrusion. I didn't think you guys. You two are pretty much Anyway, just My lord, if you have something to say then just say it. If there's any misunderstanding I can explain. Don't use instead, Xie Lian said. Time was pressing and Pei Ming might pursue them all the way over here, so they couldn't stay in Puqi Shrine for long. Ming Yi put down Shi Qingshan and started drawing the distance-shortening array on the ground. Xie Lian was just about to ask where they were going when he suddenly heard Hua Cheng sigh behind him. Xie Lian remembered his advice for not getting close to the Wind Master and company and turned to him in spite of himself. Sorry about all this, San Lang. Hua Cheng had already finished dressing himself and replied, I already knew you wouldn't just stand back and watch. After a pause, he then smiled. But why should Gerger apologize to me? You only remembered what I said a few days ago, but did you forget something else I told you? Xie Lian was slightly taken aback, wondering, what? Suddenly, he remembered. That night at the Night to Ring Green Lantern's lair, the thing Hua Cheng told him. Just keep doing what you want to do. After having remembered, Xie Lian blinked, not knowing what else to say, only he suddenly wanted to do something for Hua Cheng. Yet for the moment, there really wasn't anything he could do for him. Feeling a little discouraged, he suddenly noticed the collar of Hua Cheng's red robes and said, wait. Then he rushed up to help Hua Cheng fix his collar. Turns out, the collar of the robe Hua Cheng randomly put on wasn't properly flipped out. Having fixed it, Xie Lian inspected him for a moment before smiling. There. Hua Cheng smiled too. Thanks. A small voice inside Xie Lian echoed, I'm the one who should be thanking you. On the other side, the other two seemed to not be able to look over anymore, and even the circle drawn under Ming Yi's hand didn't seem so round any longer. Once he finished drawing the array and the door was opened again. Xie Lian had thought he would see some gloomy cave or some spectacular palace, yet unexpectedly, outside the door was a large expanse of farming fields. Far in the distance were lush green bamboo groves and verdant mountains, and farmers were scattered throughout the fields laboring. There was also a large, glistening, buff ox plowing. This scenery almost made Xie Lian think they were still at Puqi village, and he was stunned for a moment, yet Ming Yi had already walked out with Shi Qingshan on his back. Before he started, however, Hua Cheng also stepped out before him. The four walked along the ridges of the fields, and maybe it was all in his mind, but that black ox seemed to be staring at them the entire way. After walking for a bit they found a small cottage, and after the four entered and sat down, Shi Qingshan blew out a long breath. Are we not fleeing anymore? Xie Lian asked. What if General Pei chases us here? Hua Cheng looked at the outside for a while, focusing especially on that black ox before closing the door, and said nonchalantly, don't worry. He wouldn't dare mess with the master of this land. There's no benefit to it. Even the water tyrant won't be able to do anything rash. Xie Lian contemplated but still spoke up. San Lang, this whole thing is a mess, and probably implicates too much in the heavenly court. It's maybe best if you don't hang around. However, Hua Cheng only chuckled. What goes on in the upper court has nothing to do with me. I'm only sticking around with you to sightsee. Suddenly, Shi Qingshan spoke up. You all should stop hanging around. The other three in the cottage all looked to him, and Shi Qingshan continued. His Highness is right. This whole thing is a mess and there's too many involved. I'm going to stay shut up in here. My friends, there's no need to help anymore. Let's end it here. However, Xie Lian said slowly. Lord Wind Master, whether if things end here isn't up to you. It's up to Lord Water Master and the Reverend of Empty Words. Hearing this, Shi Qingshan's face stiffened. Xie Lian added, Lord Wind Master, I have a question. I hope you won't mind. What question? Does the Reverend of Empty Words have something held over yours and Lord Water Master's heads? Shi Qingshan's face was paling. That night at the terrace of Cascading Wine, Xie Lian had already set up an extremely secure defense array. As long as Shi Qingshan didn't open the door to leave, he wouldn't be harmed. Yet, why did he take the initiative to open the door? Unless someone connected his private spirit communication array and the first thing that came out of their mouth was blackmail, giving Shi Qingshan no room to fight back nor raise alarm, and could only follow as instructed. Xie Lian sat down by the table. I'm more inclined to think it's blackmail against Lord Water Master, because I believe you hadn't known whatever's transpired at first. Which was why his reaction was so strong after having learned, generating such a sharp rejection against the upper court, and would rather descend into the mortal realm to become a drifting vagabond than to stay in the heavens as a god. Ming Yi frowned. What blackmail? Shi Qingshan wasn't a gullible fool. If he fell victim to someone and lost his powers, the normal reaction should have been rage, investigate the truth, and lash out at the culprit. Yet, he did none of that. There was rage, but it wasn't directed against the Reverend of Empty Words, but against his own older brother. And to the others, he only said, "This ends here." This was all entirely abnormal. Unless it was under one special case. That Shi Qingshan's ascension itself was abnormal in the first place. To go against the heavens and alter fate to raise someone who couldn't ascend upon the divine altar was outrageously audacious, a treacherous heresy. Xie Lian had never heard of something like this. If this was true and it got out, it would for sure cause a tidal wave. Just think, everyone wished to ascend, but if anyone could use such a method, the laws of the universe would be rendered irrelevant, completely worthless. This conjecture might be absurd, but the more he thought, the more it made sense. Ever since Shi Qingshan was born, the Reverend of Empty Words had clung on to him, and the only way to escape it was to ascend. Coincidentally, he ascended. In a mere few years, a pair of blood brothers ascended one after the other. What a beautiful tale, but also, what a coincidence. Xie Lian never wanted to question the reality of Shi Qingshan's ascension, but, if the Wind Master had ascended naturally, how could his powers be so easily sucked dry? If it was so easy for a monster to turn a god into a human, who knows how many heavenly officials would already fall victim? Unless Shi Qingshan was mortal in the first place. Unless, when the Wind Master ascended, the Water Master did something underhanded, aggressively using rare treasures and devices to help the path of cultivation wasn't out of line. To ascend by way of massacre and battle in times of power change within the mortal realm wasn't out of line either. After all, the fate of the world was thus. Honor must be accompanied by blood, and after ascension, all was wiped clean. However, some things would be out of line. If a mortal, or some heavenly official, did something underhanded, conducted rituals of evil to harm lives of others for the sake of having someone ascend, that would be a completely different matter. Xie Lian asked in a low voice, Lord Wind Master, the night you ascended, was it the eve to the last day of autumn? A brief moment later, Shi Qingshan inhaled deeply. Yes. After a pause, Shi Qingshan continued. I remembered that day when we were at the town of Fujiyu. Eve to the last day of autumn, wasn't that the same day I ascended? I had wanted to ask you guys about it at first to see if that might be a clue or if it was connected somehow. Maybe it was a coincidence. But it felt hollow, so I ended up not asking. But now you know whether if it's related. It's related. Of course it's very related. Why did the Reverend of Empty Words choose that day to first send Shi Qingshan to the town of Fujiyu to watch the bloody fire social parade, then bring him to the terrace of Cascading Wine to maim? Of course it wouldn't go through all that pain for no reason. Xie Lian connected the timing in the two places together. Many years ago, at the eve to the last day of autumn in the town of Fujiyu, a mortal named He Shang broke down and murdered countless many. Also in the eve to the last day of autumn at the terrace of Cascading Wine, Shi Qingshan ascended. With this, it was more than obvious what the Reverend of Empty Words wanted to say. Shi Qingshan, your ascension had everything to do with the death of the hero of this bloody fire social. That dreadful but logical conjecture Xie Lian formulated was this. After Shi Wudu ascended, in order to have Shi Qingshan escape the reverend of empty words, he secretly found a mortal who matched all the requirements and conducted an evil ritual, making that man take Shi Qingshan's misfortune in his place. That man was no doubt the impoverished, exceptionally clever, yet somehow endlessly unlucky to the point where his entire family was ruined He Sheng. He Sheng took on Shi Qingshan's name and the Reverend of Empty Words was deceived. Then, that meant his original fate was taken by Shi Qingshan. That same night before the last day of autumn, I experienced the taste of hell on earth. The other, under immensely powerful protection, successfully ascended. Yet the fate of those two were originally completely opposite. End chapter.